granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Okay, first of all, I want to warn you that I'm not monetizing this video on YouTube because I shall be talking about something so unpleasant that, first of all, I don't think it's appropriate to break it up with adverts. And secondly, I don't think YouTube would accept it for adverts anyway. The other channels aren't that bothered, and I have no control over their policies. But if you do see ads during this video, I didn't put them there. So, I'll tell you before I start that I'm granniopteryx. Please like this video. Do it now before you get too sickened by what I'm going to tell you about. Please click that like, please share, if you reckon you have the stomach for it, of course. And please subscribe. If you want to help me financially, all the links for that are in the description, but that's up to you. All right, so I was driving up to the stables this morning, listening to Brendan O'Neill interviewing Jonathan Sacerdote, or maybe it was the other way round. Anyway, the two of them were discussing why there was this weird explosion of anti-Semitism after October the 7th. The two of them very logically didn't come up with any sort of a definitive explanation beyond the usual stuff about the groundwork being laid by historical anti-Semitism in both Christianity and Islam. And I started thinking about it as well. And a bit later on, while I and my horse were ambling through the woods in the cool, dry autumn air, I think I might have come up with an answer for Mr. Sacerdote and Mr. O'Neill, and I'm going to run it, or perhaps you might say trot it, past you. And you can tell me what you think in the comments. Perhaps I've come up with a new type of philosophy, developed while gazing ahead at the road through the flickering frame of my horse's ears. Perhaps we can call it equestrian philosophy. After all, if you happen to be aboard a horse who is misbehaving, you develop some very firm views about the meaning of life. Right, I'm going to bring you two examples. One of them is fairly acceptable in polite society, and the other one is the reason I'm not monetizing this video. And I do want to warn you, it is particularly repellent. You might not want to be listening to it in a room where there's a child who can hear it. Okay? So, Sacerdote was talking about being in a gym. This isn't the sickening bit, by the way. And one of the other people there for her daily exercise was a young woman who, in preparation for her stint, I suppose it was on the treadmill, had draped the front of the machine with a Palestine flag, while she herself was wearing various items, a keffiyeh, I suppose, and Sacerdote mentions jewellery as well, all bearing or being formed as various symbols of Palestinianism. And he said he couldn't understand why anyone felt so compelled to display their political sympathies. Well, of course, it wasn't a political sympathy she was displaying. It was her religion. That was her identity, her faith, and her hope of salvation. And of course, she wanted to convey this religion to other people in the hope that they too might be saved. Do I think this young woman would be capable of extreme violence to a Jewish person, even a child? So extreme as to amount to murder, as to reach murder? Yeah. I believe that given the correct combination of circumstances, yes, she could be capable of murdering a child, a Jewish child. And now I'm going to tell you about an incident I recently heard about that happened in Israel on October the 7th. And this is the sickening one. At least I hope that you do agree with me that it is sickening. After Hamas had done its work on the local Israeli villages, just across the border from Gaza, many nominally non-Hamas citizens of Gaza went out to the still burning villages to loot whatever they could find. One particular family, consisting of a father, mother and some children, went along as well, as if for a Saturday afternoon picnic. You know, the neighbours have been murdered, let's see what we can find in their fridge. Apparently they also found a Jewish man still alive, although it seems in a somewhat depleted state. And they beat him to the ground. Then the father of this family took a knife and used it to open up the victim's chest and cut into the man's lung. He was still breathing and blood was spraying out of the exposed organ. The father then took the piece of lung that he'd cut and he ate it. To the cheers of his family, mother and children. I have to emphasise, you might expect such behaviour from a Hamas terrorist high on Captagon and high on the murderous esprit de corps of his training. But this wasn't a Hamas gunman. This was an ordinary, bog-standard Gazan family man who might have been earning his living selling dates for all I know. And yet he and his family had a mentality that I can't call bestial, because I was on my horse while I was considering this case. And I know that even if you'd given my horse, and my horse is, after all, a beast, even had you given him a knife and hands instead of hooves with which to hold that knife, it would still not have occurred to him to do anything like what that Arab man did, that ordinary Gazan citizen. And even a carnivore, while killing to eat, wouldn't indulge in that sort of behaviour. So no, that Arab pater familias was on another level altogether. Well below the level of any animal, any beast I can think of. So what's happened to these people? In both cases, that is, the girl in the gym and the Arab in the Israeli village, both appear completely to have lost the capability of human empathy. It had completely disappeared. The girl would have been sure that there was a good chance, if it was in London, there were Jews in the gym, and she'd know that her display would cause any Jew in that gym at least disquiet, if not actual fear, and she obviously would have taken some sort of satisfaction in that. And for sure, that Arab family were extremely satisfied with their dad's handiwork. All of them. That girl and that family had lost their human souls. And that's why I think there definitely is now a general feeling of disquiet among many people in this country about the Palestinian cause. Because ultimately, I think many are coming to realise that it isn't really about Palestine after all. In fact, it's about Britain. In our case, in the USA, it's about the USA. In France, it's about France, and so on. There is a Muslim push to dominate these countries. They've been doing this for a while, by the way, and they state it quite clearly on their television and radio and in what they've written. They've been doing it. It isn't new. The Saudis and Qataris have been funding thousands of mosques, which they've stocked with thousands of imams, all delivering the message of radical Islam to the Muslims here in whatever country you're listening to this in, with the exception of most of the Arab countries who keep well clear of this sort of radicalism, and I suppose Israel too. But in the West, although, and I'm including Australasia here, of course, Although those mosques and those imams have solidified a Muslim culture among the Muslims, radicalising a group that previously was content to live its own life in its own way, now this movement wants to spread into the dominant cultures, which is more difficult. For instance, British culture is strong and rich and full of Christian references. Britain has a Christian soul, if you like, despite the attempts of the Church of England to excise it, but that's another story. So, what the radical Muslim has to do first is to somehow get the British people to lose their souls, the better to control them, because when someone has no soul, you can make them do anything. That Gazan family were a group of people with no soul. And that girl at the gym, she'd given up her soul and was given Palestinianism to replace it. Many of you might be familiar with the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Snow Queen, in which the Queen put a chip of ice into Kai's eye. And it's a magic mirror. It's supposed to be glass, but it melts, so it's ice, really. And this chip blocked his access to his own soul, and he lost the ability to feel human emotions, and he became the Queen's robot. Well, that's what Palestinianism is doing to people here. It's creating an identity of cruelty to replace the souls, and it's mostly of the intelligentsia of this country. I'm talking to you, Emily Maitlis. The non-intelligentsia are stubbornly resistant to losing their souls. Good grief, how did that happen? And that's why the intelligentsia, I'm still talking to you, Miss Maitlis. That's why the so-called intelligentsia are getting so heated up about those stubborn Brits flying flags, which are outward symbols of the British soul. Even Sacha Doty expressed surprise at the niceness of the people on the Unite the Kingdom march. He mentioned that he got absolutely no negativity from them at all, and his partner, who was wearing a skull cap to identify himself as Jewish, got no problems. The only time he did get problems was when they left the Tommy Robinson rally and bumped into some Antifa people. They were the ones who gave them the trouble. He thought that was most ironic. But the fact that he didn't realise how nice the Unite the Kingdom people are means poor old Sacha Doty has spent too much time among the intelligentsia and should mend his ways on that. Now me, out here in the sticks, ambling along on the back of my horse, or rather being on the back of my horse who is ambling along, although I have some pretensions to being some sort of an intelligentsia. Can I say that? Never mind. I hope I'm hanging on to my soul, and I hope that all of you listening to this are doing the same. All right, tell me what you think about that. Till next time, and forever. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.